Recently I had a case where there was information where the other party didn't have any reason to know, information about my client that the other party shouldn't have been aware of. And so that sort of was obviously a red flag as to what's going on, how is he gathering this information. And so in speaking to my client, I'd asked her to check her phone to see if any new programs had been installed, her iPad. Nothing was on any of those devices. And then she checked the family computer, and I asked her to send me a screenshot of the programs that had been recently installed. And when I started to Google the various types of programs, I found that one had been installed on the computer such that any devices that had been hooked up to the family's Wi-Fi, the home computer was making a mirror image of any of the communications, the text messages, the emails, Facebook Messenger. It all just was doing a mirror image of that device, so long as it was hooked up to the Wi-Fi. So that wasn't something I'd ever seen before. I had only ever seen programs on actual devices rather than being reliant upon Wi-Fi. So if I had gone to the house and hooked up to the Wi-Fi, it would have downloaded, from that point forward, anything that my device was doing connected to the Wi-Fi. So.
Yeah, it's catching all the communications. Yeah, we typically see something that's actively been loaded onto a cell phone, things like that. Usually not very hard to find, running things like that. We've also, on the flip side of that, had cases where people have put monitoring tools on their computer in an attempt to frame somebody else for having put monitoring tools on their computer, which is always a weird situation, and it is sort of related to whose property is this, questions around home computers and who's the primary user versus who purchased it. And we frequently hear things about, well, I pay for the phone account, so I should have access to the phone and things like that.
In this era with digital media, there are a lot of things that people need to consider before or while they're considering making things public and whatnot. One of the things that I encounter fairly frequently is now that with our phones the way that they are, it's so easy to take photographs and videos, and that is, especially when people are separated, I see it a lot of times with exchanges of children. One party would be videoing the whole thing as it's happening, and that is really just not a healthy environment for children to be in. It's not healthy for a relationship, for co-parenting, and it's really something that I found generally the courts do not want that to happen. I mean, rarely is there something during a transition of a child or exchange with visitation that is so important for a court to actually overlook the fact that this is really invasive and justify the fact that this video was taken. So that's one issue. I also deal with a lot of oversharing on social media. That's not a good idea whatsoever. Try to keep, social media activity, anything like that, just don't do it, period. But I also deal with people recording audio of private conversations with their spouse.
Yes.
And you really deal with a legality issue there. So,
sure.
If you're recording somebody and they don't know it.
Maryland being a two-party consent state for that sort of thing, you're
exactly
accidentally breaking the law in your attempts to somehow show your spouse in a bad light or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And then with people and text messaging too, just getting angry and upset and putting it in writing, and that's a terrible idea.
I think you sometimes see rational people just kind of lose their mind in those situations. They're lashing out at the other party, so by videoing them when they don't really want to be videoed in a tense situation, it only makes it worse. Or posting photos that they think is going to emotionally hurt the other party, things like that, not thinking about maybe what are the consequences when all these things are put together and somebody looks at what I've been doing, I'm not doing the right thing here. And it's hard for people, I think, in those situations to make some of the best decisions sometimes about what they should and shouldn't do. So oftentimes what we get into in these situations is in the online repositories, one side or the other is claiming that there was posts. There used to be posts there, and there's now been some spoliation, or there were deleted posts, that they used to support one of their claims and things like that. And frequently we're asked to then look at other sources of that data. So can we get that data from an iCloud account? Can we get that same data from a Google backup, or even local backups in iTunes and things like this on computers? And frequently there's 3, 4, 5 sets of those backups that can sometimes go back several years. So we're actually able to kind of step back in time and pull up, an old conversation or an old posting that no longer exists in somebody's current online social media account, which is, useful in those situations.
Exactly. I tell my clients that whenever you're communicating with your spouse, whenever you're putting anything up on social media, consider or act as if there is a person in a big black robe standing over your shoulder,
Yes.
watching everything you're doing, because in fact that may happen. So be sure about what it is that you're intending to do and comfortable with the fact that it's not going to be problematic for them later on. If they're angry, walk away, take some time to get a breather, think about it, and then address the situation. But don't be irrational and keep your calm.